gonna start off this video with a haughty and cliched manner, and that is of course with a famous quote. It is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it, by Aristotle. And what I mean by this, or the context for this, is I'm gonna talk about Hugboxes, great and small. Or echo chambers, as some people like to call them. And of course we associate them nowadays mostly with like social justice warriors or feminists and people of their kind. But I think they're like an extreme manifestation of the natural hugboxes of society. Hey, this looks quite cute. Anyways, because society itself is a kind of a hug box, or like each individual culture is a sort of hug box with certain values that you're supposed to espouse and others that you're supposed to reject, and so on. And well, one of the problems of hug boxes and echo chambers is that falsehoods spread easily in those. Like if you don't question, you just repeat what everybody else is telling you and you don't question it, it's of course easy to just keep repeating the same falsehoods and people will start believing they are true. And falsehood is just an untrue statement. It can be, okay, here it's a lie, but it can mean like deliberately falsified data, or just accidentally, like people really believe what they espouse, but even though if it's untrue. But anyway, like just to illustrate something, like back in the day, like Europe, it used to be, you know, pagan with all these different pagan religions, and then came Christianity, and for like almost 2000 years Europe was Christian. Like I'm just using Europe as an example. But now it's more like scientism or atheist. Like the majority culture of Europe is atheist nowadays. And just by this, you can see how the hug box has changed. Like in, like in Norse religious culture, you were supposed to believe in some things, and if you believed in other stuff, they would shun you or whatnot, or drown you in the bog or whatever. And then in Christian culture there were different values, and now in this atheist culture there are different values. And I'm not saying that any of them is necessarily better or worse than the other, except that, well, the fact is that I have lived for at least like 20 years in this atheist scientism culture, so I can tell it doesn't really espouse that many truths. I think it's full of falsehoods. And I guess when I was a child, the culture was a bit like Christian, but now I'm not thinking it was more like, you know, lip service Christian. So I don't know if I've really experienced true Christianity, and well, paganism is just something I basically read about or whatever. But anyway, the point is that like if you don't question the norms of your culture or the dogma, then you just believe in the religion of your culture. Like your culture is the religion you believe in, and you know, we can see how like malleable it is. And hey, maybe like in 10 years the next religion of Europe is Islam, and you know, Islam is the truth, of course, so, and you cannot question it. And of course, like part of this whole thing is like it's a very collectivist idea, of course. Like, you know, everybody should believe the same thing. But although I don't really buy into that, you know, collectivism versus individualism false dichotomy, because, well, I think human beings are a collective of individuals. Like, of course, you live usually, unless you're a hermit who lives alone in a cave, you're like a part of a collective, but you're also an individual with your own brain, like own mind, at least hopefully, and you're not completely brainwashed to think exactly like the guy next to you. So like this, I don't know, the collective and the individuality should support each other and not be in like, you know, direct conflict, but whatever. But like, of course, the problem with these Hugboxes of like whatever Hugbox you live in is the lack of free discussion. And I think it's like, especially nowadays, it's extremely bad. Like, I don't think it was like even back in the 80s, I think people were like more open to free discussion and like really questioning each other's beliefs. But now it's like people seem much more programmed to, you know, believe just, you know, exactly what your particular Hugbox tells you, and if you don't, then there's something wrong with you. But like, well, one of the more interesting thing is this flat Earth versus round Earth debate that has been going on the internet for a couple of years now. And like, of course, first when you hear like some people claiming that the Earth is flat, it sounds really stupid and, you know, like, come on. But actually, like, when you look into some of the arguments, and I'm not going to like espouse any belief in any shape of the Earth here, I'm just illustrating like why I think debate is a really good thing. Because like, following this discussion, like, I don't know what the shape of the Earth is. I cannot say, because, well, the flat earthers, like, they claim that there's this, you know, ice ring, like there's no Antarctica, but there is this ice ring around the round circular Earth, and some of them say there is the firmament that I mentioned in my previous video and stuff. And so I haven't seen the firmament, I haven't been to the ice ring or Antarctica, so I don't know if there's an ice ring or ice wall, or if there is an Antarctica. So that is like, you know, if I want to be honest and skeptical, I'm not gonna buy any of this. But like, you know, but one of the simple things I've learned following this flat Earth debate is that, you know, basically we don't have any real photos of the Earth. Like, I thought we had, like, this looks like a photo, and, you know, it looks like it's genuine, but it's not. And because, like, see this one, there are all these different alleged photos from NASA, but the Earth always looks like different, like the size of the continents keeps changing and stuff. And moreover, like, some scientists, like Neil deGrasse Tyson, says that, you know, Earth is pear-shaped, but, or like an oblate spheroid or something. But no, these are not oblate spheroids. These look like perfect, spheres to me. So like, why are these, you know, scientists, like, if we have these photos, why are these scientists claiming it's not a perfect sphere? Like, what is up with that? And, you know, this doesn't imply that the Earth is flat necessarily or anything like that. It just implies that, you know, NASA has been lying to us. And that's something I've been, like, ever since I was a teenager, of course, like, knew about that the moon landing was allegedly a hoax. And I thought, like, maybe there's something to it, but I didn't really get, like, why would they do it and all of that stuff. But now I'm, like, just following the flat Earth debate and stuff. I've noticed that, yeah, they say, like, many of the flat earthers say that NASA hasn't ever been to space, that it's all a hoax. And when you look at it, like, critically, and it, like, yeah, that actually makes more sense. Like, NASA has been caught lying and fabricating evidence in this and that, and yeah, these all are, like, they are composites, and you can, like, find NASA employees saying it, that these are not actual photos, they're composites where they splice together plenty of smaller images and stuff. So these are not actual photos, and of course, like if these are, why are some people claiming that the Earth is shaped like this? So, or something like this. Of course, they don't claim there is this brown stem here. So yeah, like this is why it's good to have debate, even with like, you know, stuff that may sound very ridiculous at first, but like when you know, actually pay attention, like, hey, they have, at least they have some evidence. So like, I don't know, like maybe the Earth is still round or whatever. Like I think it's maybe it's shaped like a duck or something. So who knows? But like, this is why we should have open debate. And like, of course, like if in like you know, in especially like mainstream media, if somebody says the Earth is flat, you're gonna, you know, people are just gonna ridicule you, like instead of asking like, oh really, that sounds like an outrageous claim, what makes you say that? And then you could, you know, okay, there's this evidence, like you don't have to get so emotional about things that you think sound ridiculous, especially like if it's a scientific thing. Like, okay, if somebody is claiming that having sex with 5-year-old children is, you know, natural, then I can understand, because that's more like a moral issue. But this is just a, you know, very simple scientific fact. What is the shape of the Earth? Like, there's this evidence to support this theory and that evidence to support that theory, and, you know. Okay, moving on. And another thing is like, you know, everybody's heard the memes about reptilians or whatever, conspiracy theories, and I'm not convinced that these, you know, shape-shifting reptilians exist, but I'd like to be able to talk about it. Like, you know, what is the evidence for shape-shifting reptilians and what is the evidence against it, without, you know, really like dismissing it out of hand because it sounds silly. Because, yeah, it does sound silly, but, well, people believe all sorts of silly things, and I think some of the silly things that they believe are actually true. So, and I don't think this is true, but I'd like to discuss it. Like I do, like, you know, one of the, I guess the most famous proponent of these reptilian shapeshifters is David Icke, this, you know, conspiracy theorist, and I've read some of his books and seen plenty of his videos and stuff, and I think some of the stuff he says makes sense, but some of the stuff he says doesn't make sense, and a lot of the stuff he says is like, well, maybe it's true, but you can't really prove it. Like he mentioned, he claims, or at least claimed at some point, that the moon is some sort of matrix controlled by the reptilians that they use to control people's minds, or something to that effect, like the moon matrix. And, well, maybe it's true, but how do you prove it? Like, but yeah, I still think it's good to know this, like you know, it entertain these ideas that, well, either you think are not true or that you think might be true, but you cannot prove one way or the another. So, and this is like why is, I don't know, it bothers me that there is always this like assumed dogma of consensus in society. Like there's, you know, as they say in Game of Thrones, it is known. It is known. It is known. It is known. Like this isn't like although it's you know, supposed to be this primitive nomads who have this it is known meme, but I think it's also like represents us, like our modern advanced technological society where we have these fancy gadgets, but people still are, I think people are much more ignorant now than they were in, like, you know, days like this. And yes, I know this is fiction, it's not actual history, but still this, I don't know, it's like a representation of a more honest era when you actually had to live in the real world, but whatever. So like, and when it comes to society, you're not supposed to like go against the dogma of your the dogma of your society. Like, back when Galileo Galilei said that the earth goes around the sun and not vice versa, he was condemned by the church. But nowadays, if you say the opposite, then you're condemned by Neil deGrasse Tyson and people like that. And like, if you publicly question evolution, gravity, many like historical events, you are ridiculed. Like, instead of people asking like, hey, why do you believe that? It's so different to what I have heard or something like that. But no, they more like they attack you. And I just think it's, dumb, and it makes people dumber that this is the approach we take to different kind of opinions. And so yeah, an open discussion would be much better than shutting out alternative views. And like, back in the 90s, when I was a child still, at least back here in Finland, like at least in the like early to mid 90s, you were still supposed to pay lip service to like God and Christianity. Like, you were supposed to, like, I don't think most people really believed in God or Jesus or anything like that, but you were in public, you were supposed to pretend like you do. And then once in like class, I remember like saying that I don't believe that there is God up there. I think there's like, green slime balls, like aliens up there. And then the teacher and the class laughed at me like, ha 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 ha, so silly or something. But that's what I didn't say that I necessarily believe there are aliens, but it's more likely. And nowadays, I think it's more like the opposite. I don't really think there is any aliens up there. There might be, but I haven't seen any like good evidence to support it. And I believe God exists. I don't consider myself Christian, but yeah, I do believe that God exists. I just don't know what exactly God is, or what religion describes God the best, but that's another story. But but nowadays, like 30 years ago or so, you had to pay lip service to Christianity, but now you have to pay lip service to scientism or atheism. And if you say you believe in God, or you're a Christian, like, well, you're not supposed to, like, I've seen many like clips from like TV shows in America where like, leave your God at home, or if somebody is praising Jesus for their sport, like success in sports or whatever, like, I don't know, like, I'd like people to be able to discuss, like, if somebody believes in, let's say one is a like a devout Christian, one is a devout atheist, and one is a devout somewhat agnostic, somewhat religious like me, like, to be able to discuss openly, like, why do you believe that, and why don't you believe that, and so on and so forth. But now it's more like, you're supposed to take your, like, like, when you play some computer game or something, there's like, 2 or 3 factions. You have to pick one faction. You have to pick that, one faction, and then you fight for the faction, even though you don't know what they believe in, but that's how the games work. So you have to pick a faction and you fight for it because it's fun, and don't question things. But yeah, like, so there is always this dogma in society, and like, I think a lot of people, like, they don't necessarily believe that dogma themselves, but it is more it's more beneficial for them to like pretend like they do, because, like, if somebody doesn't believe in the moon landing, you don't want to say it in public, and you just pretend like, if you're a politician and you think that the moon landing was a hoax, you don't want to say that, like, you're just gonna argue, like you're gonna play with the rules given to you by society to get ahead. And I like, on one hand it makes sense, but on another it's fairly dishonest, so I don't like it. And like, well, that's one reason I don't like the so-called skeptic community, because they're not very skeptic. Like, back when 2-3 years ago, when Sargon of Akkad was making his, videos pointing out the stupidity of feminists and stuff, that was great. But since then, I don't think he's become more skeptical, but less skeptical. He's just created his own Hugbox with his friends and stuff. And even like Dave Cullen, Computing Forever, it's because of him that I joined Minds, but I haven't really watched any of his videos in a few weeks or months or whatever, because, well, I think it's just, he's also too mainstream. Like, he made some videos about, what if we go to Mars, or why haven't we gone back to the moon, without, questioning NASA's claims that they went to the moon. And I don't want to provide all of the evidence here why it's like, even NASA doesn't seem to know what they're like. Okay, just to mention a few examples, like, I've seen this one astronaut, I forget his name, is some bald guy. He said that they destroyed the technology that allowed them to go to the moon, and now they have to rebuild it. And it's like, what? Why did they destroy it? What technology was it? And like, the Van Allen belt, there's supposedly this belt or barrier of deadly radiation between the Earth and the moon. But back in the 60s, the astronauts went through it with no problem. But nowadays they cannot do it, and all of this bullshit. Like, there's more if you're really interested in skeptical, critical thinking. So yeah, this is why I get bored with all of the skeptic community and stuff. Because yeah, I do consider myself a skeptic. I try like to be suspicious of anything that is very true mainstream, or anything that is assumed to be true. And so yeah, I guess it's easy for me to like question, like, we've always been told that the Earth is round, but now that there's this flat earthers, like, yeah, maybe the Earth isn't round. But then when the flat earthers are saying like, no, it's actually flat, like, well, I'm also gonna question that, because, well, maybe it's not. Maybe there's something else going on. Who the fuck knows? But yeah, so of course it's good to look at various sources and not just stick to your echo chamber. But of course, like, it's understandable that we have a limited amount of time and energy. So of course you don't, like, whenever you hear something that sounds ridiculous, it might just be that, like, because most of the things in society that people are talking about is just bullshit, and I guess it's best of being ignored. Like, whatever, like, celebrity gossip there is or whatnot, like, why would you care? So, like, and of course, like, when I first heard about the flat earth thing, I thought, like, yeah, it's some psyop or bullshit or whatever. But actually, when I look into it, I learned something. Like, I don't know, like, it's just an example. I just think it's one of the most controversial and, like, powerful examples. So that's why I refer to it. But so yeah, I do understand that people are resistant to new things, and I think you should be a bit like conservative, because, like I said, most things that people are believing or talk about, they are bullshit. So you should be to resist them. And, like, I don't expect like a feminist, because I've like so many like the vast majority, like 99% of like feminists and social justice warriors whose writing I've read or like videos I've seen, they are talking bullshit, like pretty much all of it. So I don't expect, like, you know, if I know that somebody is a feminist and they come up with a new video or some claim or what the fuck, this looks interesting. Hug machine. Okay. If a feminist, you know, people say like, hey, there's this feminist, they have really good video, they have good ideas. I'm like, do I even want to bother watching it, since, you know, I'm so accustomed to brushing off whatever feminists say, because, well, most likely what they are saying is bullshit. So whatever, like when you are presented with a new idea that sounds like bullshit, or it comes from people who you think are bullshit, so it's of course natural to brush it off and ignore it and stuff. But sometimes you shouldn't do it. Sometimes you should, you know, take a leap of, like, you know, faith or courage, and okay, let's look if they have something worthwhile to say. And some, well, most likely it's gonna be bullshit, but sometimes you actually learn something important. So yeah, I don't know, hug boxes are not cool. Okay.